Welcome back to Power Panel 365. This is your host, Star Coates. Welcome back to Power Panel 365. Today I'm here with the librarian, Dorothy, and we're here at the Oakland Library, and she's going to give us a historical tour of the historical part of the library. And correct me if I say anything wrong today. So we're just going to kind of highlight a little bit of the library, some of the parts that most people may not know about or have seen or even heard before. And those of you that do travel, this will be a really good treat for some of you if you want to come down here yourself and travel. So Dorothy, what would you like to show us today?
Well, this is the Oakland History Center. It's been a part of the Oakland Main Library since the collection has been a part of the library since the 20s. The center has been a part of the library since the early 1950s, when the main library, this particular building, was built and opened in January 1951. Not we personally, but the library staff made the history collection an important part of the larger main library collection. And we have gone through a number of evolutions here. We were the California room originally, so sometimes when you walk around the room, you'll see things about Yosemite and Los Angeles. And then in 1978, we focused our attentions and our collections on the East Bay, Alameda, and Contra Costa County. So even though we are called the Oakland History Center, we are actually serving, collecting, and preserving Alameda and Contra Costa County in particular in our collections. And we appeal to all kinds of people. Students come and use the center, of course, but also writers, novelists, researchers, genealogists. So we continue to be a really important community service for people.
Okay, so Dorothy is going to show us some of the things that are within the display cases, and then we're going to talk about a few more things within the library. So we'll be showing you guys a few things.
All right. So when people come into the Oakland History Center, they're usually very self-directed. They know what they're looking for. They're either researching their neighborhoods, or they're doing genealogy work, and they're consulting the city directories, which tell you not only who lived where, but what they did for a living, and sometimes who they worked for. And so those are really great documents. So do you want to walk around and see everything? We're right here at our display cases. Every few months, the Oakland History Center.
Okay.
So a few times a year, we put on an exhibit highlighting the history of Oakland in particular. Sometimes it's focused on a particular person or a movement, a political movement, or an election campaign, just a variety of subjects that we want to highlight, and also to highlight our own collections here.
Mm-hmm.
And so once a year, what you're seeing now is an exhibit on Klinknerville, which was a part of North Oakland that became the Golden Gate District. And this exhibit was mounted by Don Hausler, who is in charge of the Emeryville Historical Society. He also edits their wonderful journal that's full of really juicy stories about Emeryville, which is one of the smaller cities in Alameda County, but has a really fascinating history.
Wow. So then what do we have in this case
So
on this
whole
side?
Part of it became the city of Emeryville, or it's adjacent to the city of Emeryville, I should say. And so there was a lot of industry there. There were a lot of businesses there, really strong commercial strip on San Pablo Avenue. And San Pablo Avenue is one of our oldest streets in the East Bay.
Mm.
It runs through 7 cities, and it was prior to Europeans coming to the East Bay, it was an Indian road,
Wow.
and that it follows that same path of the Indian road of the Ohlonies. So, hi. So we're here in front of our clipping file. One of the things that makes the Oakland History Center really unique is that we maintain these historic clipping files of newspaper and magazine articles, brochures, monographs, about a variety of things. For example, we have a folder on information about the Pullman porters. Now, the Pullman porters were really important to the development of Oakland's black middle class because they were well-traveled, well-educated group of people, workers, both men and women. People tend to think of the Pullman porters as just men, but they also employed maids. So as you can see, we keep a lot of different material on a variety of subjects, whether it be colleges and universities or high schools or government issues, elections, different groups of people, African Americans, Japanese, Chinese, and all kinds of agencies like the fire department, the teachers, all of that. And so we try to basically represent Oakland history in all of its aspects. So this is what's been fun about the job.
Yeah.
Just seeing all of the.
And then you guys even got some heavier duty clippings.
Mm-hmm. And then some bibliographies that people have compiled.
So
over
this is
the
one
years.
of the survivors.
And then this thing came from.
So he's 87. And this is Harmon Simons.
Oh yeah, showing him at the 16th Street station in
Yeah.
West Oakland.
So I don't want to mix anything up.
And so this is another one. This was a history of the Pullman porters, very brief.
Oh, it's like a little book.
Yeah. And I would have loved to have gone on this tour for the Pullman porter. This was from '97. So,
Yeah, they look like they were going all over. Oakland, Los Angeles, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago. Wow.
yeah.
And look at the little pictures in here. That's cute. Wow.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's like such nostalgia there.
Right.
Wow.
The interesting thing about the Pullmans as a group,
Oh my God,
they keep putting it anywhere. The interesting thing about the Pullman porters is that because they traveled all around the United States, they got to pick up foreign languages, they got to pick up stock tips. They were comparatively better paid than other African American workers, certainly more than domestic workers or agricultural workers. And so they were able to invest in West Oakland, buy houses, invest in property, invest in businesses. And so that's why they were really, I think they kind of hold their importance in our community because they were able to really make an investment and grow the community, really develop it.
Wow. So they made sure that they put their money right back into
Right
the
back
community.
into the community, absolutely. The other thing that we highlight here, as we get new books, I'm constantly buying new books that talk about in various ways art history and what's going on currently in the East Bay. And so we promote those books by putting them on display. And this is an ever-changing display.
Yeah, I like this Pointer Sisters
The
book
Pointer
here.
Sisters, this was written by Anita and their brother Fritz. They're a Dorothy Brothers Press. They were from West Oakland, a big family from West Oakland who brought fame and fortune to Oakland because the Pointer Sisters were so popular, right, in the 70s and 80s. And of course, Bill Russell, another person from West Oakland, a really famous basketball player, played for the Boston Celtics, went to McClymonds High School. He must be in his 80s now, but people are still
talking
writing
about him.
talking about him, honoring his career in basketball. There's poetry, there's things about a hiking club, things about artists who lived in Oakland in the past, things about food justice. So we collect a wide variety of material on every aspect of life in Oakland and the East Bay.
Okay, I want to check out some books that I saw on this side.
On the
too.
other side, okay.
Okay, we're going to be focusing on the other side of the book display, and I wanted to kind of just show you guys a couple of books from this side, and Dorothy can let us know you guys just got some new books in.
Yes. We buy books every month that are focused on Oakland history or East Bay history. But we are lucky enough to be living in a place where there's a perpetual interest in certain things, and certainly for us in Oakland, there's a continuous interest in the Black Panther Party. And so, as you can see here, we have a couple of new books on the Black Panthers. This one, namely, about Eldridge Cleaver, who was one of the leaders of the Black Panthers.
Make sure you guys can see the book really well. Okay. It says by Justin Gifford, if I'm saying that last name correctly.
And then you have this one here, Black Power Afterlives, the enduring significance of the Black Panther Party. Like I said, there is just continuous interest in the Black Panther Party, and now the history of the Black Panthers and the way the story of the Black Panthers is told is really becoming a much more nuanced story. Now we're seeing more books talking about their community programs that helped people, provided groceries, provided health care. The breakfast program, of course, is very famous. And also just looking at the Black Panthers as a core of people who are now aging and trying to evaluate their legacy.
Yes. And they're continuing on, and people are still getting more and more interested in them. This looks like it's going to be a really good read.
Oh, yeah. And people are also starting to look at the Panthers from a new perspective, like looking at them from a gender perspective, looking at them from a soft power perspective, and looking at them, what was their economic impact, not just their political impact. So that's been really interesting to see change over the course of years.
Yes, and they've been such a big influence here in Oakland that all the work that they've done it's just going on and on and on and on. I see one more book over there that I want to grab just right quick.
Oh, okay. Oh, and he took some incredible and iconic, as it turns out, photographs of the Panthers in their heyday.
So if you guys never seen this book before,
check it out.
Yeah. I mean, I know for them just to be there was something else, for the photographers, for those that did the artwork.
Yes.
Like, this is so cute. Classroom learning.
Purple Jones and Kenneth Green, as well as Stephen James, who put this book together. So as you can
Yeah,
leaf
this
through
is an
that book,
iconic
this is
picture.
an iconic picture, isn't it?
I love that.
And this is
This
in
one
front of
is
the
too.
Infirmary Park, which they had named Bobby Hutton Memorial Park after his death.
I like the way the kids looking right there.
You know what's
I
been
love how they
incredible
capture
too is
that
how young
afro.
they are.
Yeah, I think so. You know, and I just took some photos and kind of compiled them together from the artist that were doing. He was doing all the newspaper clippings. I'll have to take a look at this again later.
Yeah, it's great. It's a terrific
It
one.
is.
And you know, he
just
took that
you just
iconic picture
yeah.
of Huey
Huey.
Newton in the rattan chair. Picture of Bobby Seale when he was running for mayor of Oakland in 1973. So this is one of those.
It's iconic pictures, yeah.
So those are the kind of things we share with the community. So yeah, this is one of our standards.
Wow.
What else should we talk about?
What else should we talk about? I was gonna say, what else? Okay, now Dorothy is gonna show us some of the clippings from the files that they have. So go ahead and explain to us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
So I pulled for you some of our more popular clipping files. One on West Oakland. West Oakland, like the Black Panthers, continues to be of interest because it's the city's oldest neighborhood. That's where the city began. Basically, what we call downtown to the bay, which is going to encompass West Oakland. And so what I pulled are some things from our clipping files about West Oakland, about its redevelopment in the 60s and the impact of that redevelopment and its resurrection as a urban development project. And also we've pulled some things about efforts to try to maintain the culture of West Oakland. West Oakland was a predominantly mixed community to begin with. But by, the 1920s, 1930s, it had started to become more of an African-American community, partly because the Pullman porters were required, number one, to be African-American, but number two, to live west of Adeline Street.
Okay.
So that's why, and once, housing became not only affordable, but open to other people, there's housing as Portuguese, Chinese, and so forth, they could move out, whereas housing restrictions prevented, African Americans and some people of color, like Mexican, like some Asians, to, kind of stay where they were. And so, but over time, as the 20th century continued on, the years came on, it became more black enclave. So there's always been that kind of struggle for space. During World War II, there were tremendous amounts of people coming in, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people came to the Bay Area. Tens of thousands of people came to Oakland, and the population really doubled. A lot of people were leaving the rural South to get jobs in the industrial North and the industrial West, especially during the war when they needed wartime workers to build ships and tanks and so forth. And so that created a huge influx of people into the city, and particularly into West Oakland, which is where a lot of the war industry was located, because it's right there at the corner. And so it's just a fascinating history. It's a sad history too, because but also a kind of triumphant story as well, because despite all of the housing discrimination and job discrimination, people made West Oakland a kind of go-to place for a time. So it's something to be proud of, and there's still people there. Of course, it's been hit lately by lots and lots of gentrification, redevelopment of those housing units that were considered public housing at once. Those got redeveloped, but the old Victorian homes that are there, that are still there, they're now selling for millions of dollars.
Yes.
And people find themselves, leaving. Old families who've been there for generations are leaving. Here's an article about Esther's Orbit Room, which was a nightclub, and Esther Mabry was just one of many people who owned entertainment spots in West Oakland, and became part of a blues tradition in West Oakland. But a lot of public projects, like the construction of BART, the construction of 880 Freeway, we used to call it the Nimitz Freeway, and then the main post office complex, those things displaced hundreds of families. And that was also one of the reasons that we see this kind of shift in leaving of West Oakland.
Wow, so I'm going to show you guys the clipping. Make sure you guys can see it really well. Miss Esther down here at the bottom.
And as I said, West Oakland was our oldest community.
Mm-hmm.
And so after the real tragedy of the Loma Prieta quake in October 1989,
Yes.
there was efforts by Sonoma State and some other agencies to kind of, go through West Oakland and really look at it from an archaeological perspective, because it was our oldest community, and they dug up all kinds of things, like Chinese pottery and equipment from industrial work sites and so forth. So it was interesting that they were taking the time to really kind of understand the importance of this space, and not just let's just rebuild the freeway very quickly, but really try to understand what went on there, what are they putting that replacement freeway on top of.
Right.
So that was a good project as well. Here's a photocopy of a 1897 San Francisco Chronicle article, a plan for a West Oakland park.
Mm.
And I'm trying to think of the name of what this parcel is in. It's 18th and Wood, so I think it's Raimondi Park. Let's see. Yeah. So there's that from 1897. And that's near the Wood Street train station, where the Pullman Porters were headquartered. There was that chief workspace of the train station just on 16th and Wood, just a couple blocks away.
Wow.
Yeah. And you like this picture, so.
Yeah, that one was really cute.
Yeah. He's talking about a community center in West Oakland. And there is this tradition of self-reliance, community reliance there, despite, all of the poverty that has been there over the years, and all the neglect, the municipal neglect of the district. People really did come together and try to help each other and stand up for their rights, and when they were not being treated well.
So this is the Oakland Tribune clipping from May 18th, 1969. Hope you guys can see it really well.
Another thing about the development of West Oakland, the kind of more modern development of West Oakland, was, the struggle to have public housing that would address, housing needs, but also there was a community fight to make sure that those people who were homeowners didn't lose their homes. And so there was a real negotiation. I think the story about redevelopment ends up being kind of one-sided, like everybody got pushed out. But there was also a real struggle, enacted by the people who lived there to say, no, I own my house, I keep my yard tidy, that kind of thing. So there was some pushback, there was some agency. It wasn't just like, oh, they came in with bulldozers. Actually, one house pulled down with a tank. That's a famous image too. So there's this, and this is something that was put out by the redevelopment agency, which Oakland has, but no longer has, which says something. Why is there no redevelopment agency anymore?
So that's the type of thing that they wanted to get up and going for the community.
If you want to read a really interesting article about Oakland's redevelopment history and how it was promoted and marketed,
Yes.
You might read Mariah Ulinska's, you can look this up online, Mariah Ulinska's article in Places magazine, Places Journal. Places Journal talks about urban design, urban life, how people live in cities, how cities are developed or undeveloped, and it's really, really interesting. And I'm forgetting the name of the article, but definitely look that up on. I just Googled it because I always forget the name of the article. But it's a really good article about two of the principals, both of them African American. One who was the head of the redevelopment agency, and the other who was the head of the Oak Center Neighborhood Association, whose family had been in West Oakland and fighting to stay in West Oakland since the 30s, like 40 years before the modern redevelopment era. So definitely check that one out.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you.
How would you like to end? Would you like to say a prayer, a poem, some words of wisdom? Where can we find Dorothy?
I would say come and visit me and my coworker Emily Foster at the Oakland History Center whenever you're in Oakland, and we will hook you up with some new and fresh history stories, or some old and fascinating history stories. So come and check us out.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
All right, bye-bye.